Hello and welcome to Waning Crescent. This is another part of the Vampire Game Jam. If you could move past me, it would say that behind me. But yeah, it's part of the Vampire Game Jam. And a friend of mine is also playing a lot of these games, and she played this one a little bit before I did, and she was like, "You gotta try this one," so I'm trying this one. This one has a glossary, which is nice, actually, because a lot of these games just kind of assume you know a lot about it, and I do know a lot about it, and I do try to explain things if I think that they need to be explained. But this is probably doing a better job than I ever would. The Anarch movement, loosely organized sect of vampires which rejects the traditional society of Tacoline and fights back against the tyranny of elder vampires. Some Anarchs are true freedom fighters and rebels, but others are a little more than street toughs. Ancilla, centuries-old vampires embraced between the French Revolution and World War II, with recent disappearance of many elder kindred. They are among the oldest that are still active in the modern knights. Okay. I didn't realize that they actually had generational names, but that makes sense, actually. And yeah, in the current V5 Vampire Handbook, the oldest vampires, the older vampires that are older than these ones, are just like disappearing and leaving, and for reasons that are probably having to do with the end of the world, which is wonderful. Was utter kiss, vampires who remain entirely outside or aloof from the wider vampire society. Often their unaffiliated nature is due to the ignorance of sex, but sometimes it is by choice. The utter kiss are in a precarious position with no or few allies to call for and often distrusted, also known as the unbound. So these would be vampires that don't take part in the Anarch, or the Camarilla, or even the Sabbat, which is another group that this might even talk about it. The Beast, name given to the collective set of instincts, hungers, and the drives that instilled in a vampire during the embrace, which is when a human turns into a vampire. Some vampires personify their beast as another personality within themselves, parasitical or alien. The Beast is what causes vampires to lose control and frenzy, and they can have other effects upon the actions taken by the vampire, both subtle and not. Blood bond, a powerful connection forged between two vampires created when one has drunk the fresh vitae of the other on 3 separate occasions. A blood bond is a form of domination or mastery. The one bonded, called a thrall, finds it very difficult to act against the wishes of the vampire who bonded them, called a regnant. This is a new word for me. Vampires can also blood bond mortals. That would be called a ghoul. Blood leech, vampires who feed exclusively on the vitae of other vampires, either by necessity or as a form of addiction. They are often the subject to blood bonding and be controlled by their need for another fix. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. I know there are actually types of vampires who feed exclusively on other vampires, but I thought that was more of a clan thing with those particular vampires. Those vampires are feared by other vampires because they're like, oh yeah, they eat you. But I wasn't aware that there could be vampires not of that clan. That seems to be suggesting there are vampires not of that clan who drink other vampire blood. Camarilla, one of the primary sects of vampire society, the Camarilla has a strict internal authority structure and is dedicated to maintaining order and safety through the following of the 6 traditions, with the most important being the masquerade, which keeps the existence of vampires a secret from humanity. Child, the embraced progeny of a vampire, a word used to indicate the lineage of a given vampire, when used by an elder vampire or of one younger, can be derogatory, implying inexperience. Sire would be the creator of the child. So when a vampire says, oh, my sire, it's like, this is the one that made me a vampire, kind of thing. Disciplines, bloodborne vampiric abilities which a mortal gains access upon being embraced as a vampire. Each clan bloodline possesses a distinct specific set of disciplines, which increase in strength as a vampire ages and convey an array of preternatural powers. Domain, a Camarilla term used for the territory controlled by a particular vampire. Princes generally claim entire cities as their domain and parcel out smaller areas within the city as the assigned or given domains of subservient vampires. Duskborn, thin-blooded. Okay, Duskborn would be another term for thin-blooded. Interesting. Elysium, an official gathering place for vampires. An Elysium might be held in a public building such as an art gallery or club, but vampiric activities are kept strictly apart from mortal knowledge. In Elysium, the safety of vampires socializing and pursuing business there is guaranteed by rule and custom. Embrace. I think I went through this before, but the method by which a mortal is turned into a vampire. The act of creating a new vampire. To embrace a mortal, they must be drained of their own blood and given a taste of the vampire's own blood to replace it. So they have to be killed and then be given the blood of the vampire to become a vampire, essentially. And yeah, that blood, the child is always going to be a little bit watered down version of the powers that the sire had. So, like, by understanding that, you understand that the child will always be a little bit weaker than their sire. You know, that's how the hierarchy kind of goes. Full blood, full-blooded, term use can be used refers to a vampire generally within 13 generations of the original progenitor. Within 13 generations. Okay. Whose blood is still strong to sustain a full vampiric state. This is distinct from Thinbloods. Oh! Okay, I understand. With whom the blood has weakened. Yes. Okay. Gangrel, a clan of vampires who are more in touch with their inner beast, finding a rapport with animals in the natural world. They often eschew skitties, entirely and live in the wild, taking on forms of animals or forming partnerships with them. Other names: outcasts, wolves, ferals, clan of the beast. So the Gangrel are the clan of vampires where if you kind of wanted to play a werewolf, but you're playing a vampire game, you'd probably play Gangrel. Keep of Elysium. An honorific title for the vampire with the responsibility for caretaking of a declared Elysium site. It falls to the keeper to ensure the customs of Elysium are maintained by all within. They may schedule or cancel events held at the Elysium site as well. It is a position of some renown. Kindred. Camarilla term which can be used as a name for either all vampires collectively or a single vampire. Lick, vulgar colloquial term for a vampire, often but not exclusively derogatory. Yeah. Malkavian, a clan of vampires burdened by knowledge. They embrace instills in them both a strange extrasensory connection to all others of their clan, and also an insight which often overflows into derangements. These can mimic mundane mental illnesses or express themselves more singularly. The Malkavian sees and knows too much, and is driven to a form of supernatural madness. Other names: lunatics, oracles, visionaries, clan of the moon. Yeah, so they, yeah, this is a better explanation than I ever gave. I gave them that, like, they know too much and it makes them freaked out, basically. Masquerade, curtain of lies and omissions that covers the existence of kindred. The first and most important of the Camarilla rules is ensures the continued safety of hidden vampiric groups and ensuring that they keep hidden in plain sight among mortals. It postulates that no human not controlled by tight bounds should ever learn about vampires. Breaches are harshly punished. I'm not sure if it's part of the rules of the Masquerade or slightly different, but if you are within the Camarilla, a vampire within the Camarilla cannot embrace a mortal without explicit consent from like a lot of other elder vampires. And then they have to if they decide to do that, they probably take a long time to teach you the rules of being a vampire before they actually embrace them into being a vampire. That's how things are done in the Camarilla, at least. Nosferatu, a clan of vampires who all, it is sometimes said, wear their curse on the outside. The vampiric embrace causes Nosferatu to manifest repulsive traits. Remember when I was playing Prince of Nothing, if you want to see more about Nosferatu. Cause a variety of physical deformities. In extreme cases, they are breaches of the Masquerade. The classic image of the Nosferatu resembles Count Orlok from the 1929 movie. Other names: Sewer Rats, Horrors, Orloks, Clan of the Hidden. Yeah, it sucks being a Nosferatu sometimes. At least they aren't insane. Prince, a position of power within the Camarilla structure. Princes rule over a domain, often a large city, and assign smaller subordinate domains to their own kindred loyal to the Camarilla. The term is gender neutral. Anarch kindred do not recognize the authority of the prince or the institutions the prince represents. They're like, yeah, for you, you're the power, fight the power, that sort of thing. Sabbat, scattered and fragmented sect of vampires which rejects all connection to the former humanity in favor of embracing the bestial and monstrous side of their vampiric nature. The Sabbat is an interesting thing to read about, because this is what the Sabbat is today, correct? That is what it is in the present day. But the Sabbat was created originally to, like, reject the hierarchy in much the same way that the anarchs are created. They didn't want to be... The Sabbat were vampires originally that just didn't want to be controlled completely by the older vampires that made them. They wanted to be their own sort of thing. But over the course of time, they have turned into this, which is more monstrous than the Camarilla or even the anarchs. Scourge, a position of power within the Camarilla structure. The Scourge is an executioner, specifically responsible for the execution of the thin-blooded, the clanless, and those embraced illegally. Those embraced illegally who are not, like, told to, like, who are not allowed to do that. Sometimes they're saved and taken pitied upon by the prince, and they'll be allowed to continue. And the thin-blooded in some cities, depending on the prince, sometimes the thin-blooded are allowed to be their own group, if there's a lot of them. The thin-blooded can be useful in the fact that they can oftentimes stand in the daylight. They can integrate into human society much more easily than most other vampires can. Let's see, Sire, one who created a new vampire. I think I've gone over that before. Thin-blooded. Vampire has more than 13 generations from the original progenitor, whose blood is too weak and too diluted to fully manifest its curse or the traits of the Sire's clan. Some can even walk in the sun, generally feared, distrusted, or hated by full kindred. Duskborn, runoffs, Mercurians. It's, so the progenitor, this is where we get into, like, vampires have created their own version of events, and it's hard to say what is actually true, but the progenitor, it's generally agreed to be, Cain. An Abel and Cain. And any vampires that came from him, like, directly from him, would be extremely powerful, and then so on and so forth. As you go down the line, the blood gets more and more diluted until we are now 13 generations away from Cain, and the curse is barely even noticeable in some of the thin-blooded. Toreador! Clan of vampires with mania for beauty. The Toreador are often artists, performers, libertines. They sometimes lose themselves in the contemplation of some beauty, which matches their sense of aesthetics. And other vampires often perceive them as shallow, but they should not be underestimated. Yeah, they get sort of stuck on, like, things that are pretty to them. In the case of, like, if they see something that they kind of think is pretty, instead of being able to ignore it, they have a difficult time, like, being around this thing, because it's like, oh, it's so pretty, I gotta look at it. Vitae, the supernaturally enhanced, magically empowered blood of a vampire, which sustains the immortality and various vampiric abilities evinced by the clan. Vitae is distinct from animal or human blood, sometimes simply called the blood. Voice of the blood, known as the Averhanaja, the Voice of the Blood is a Hungary-based extremist group, which believes in blood purity and the superiority of the vampiric race, and their inherent right to hold power over humanity. They seek the destruction of the Camarilla and dissolution of all sects and clans in favor of a new order with the voice themselves in power. Ah, so they are worse than the Sabbat. Okay. There are things in there I didn't know, so it's a good thing that we actually went through that. I hope everyone was okay with me just reading through that. Next item of order. The declaiming woman in dark livery stands stiff-necked. Too much starch on her collar. I must allow myself the luxury of silently mocking this congregation of monsters, lest I give them the satisfaction of my fear. Florian Mayer, thin-blooded, you stand in the court of Budapest, undeclared, infringing on the tradition of hospitality. In absence of your sire, the breaching of progeny falls on you, also. She pauses, the stark echo of a voice tumbling back and forth against the frescoed ceiling of the palace. They must have picked this place for the acoustics to enhance the pomp. The Prince's mercy allows you to take the mark of the crescent moon and continue your existence under Camarilla law. All my faults laid upon me, and my escape so narrow it's stifling. I fight against the tightness of my chest. And take a breath. Okay, well, we're gonna, bow. They call some of their humans herd, but here tonight I'm the cattle. They promised me a branding, and what do I do in answer? Bow my head and shoulders to appease them. It feels like eating salt. I straighten and dare a glance at the Prince. She sits on the grand upholstered chair under the soft glare of the chandelier, and a coronet of diamonds sits glimmering on her dark-gathered hair. Death froze her youthful looks and her sense of fashion. Her white dress and pearl necklace look like relics from before the Great War. In fact, so does the oval of her face. I've seen it in schoolbooks and documentaries. She slowly lifts her chin. In our benevolence, we have decided to allow your choice, Thinblood. If you prefer it, your death will be quick and painless. Or you may elect to accept the crescent moon mark and live under our oversight and protection. Provided that a generous member of this court cares to keep you in their domain. I shift my eyes left and right. The beautiful and the damned sitting around the room, most of them would pass for human at a glance, at least until you see their eyes. They're avid, hungry. They glitter in their finery, and none of them are pretending to be anything but what they are. Dead things in a fancy dress, as opposed to me, dead only in halves. They are watching me, and that cold thing in their eyes. I'm tonight's entertainment, passing thrill to liven up the dull eternity. All strangers, except for two of them, a Nosferatu and a Toreador. What do I do? You know what? I actually like Nosferatu. They're pretty cool. Tomas V, my acquaintance, secret protector, handler. Hideous like all his kind, yet somehow compelling with an air of raucous confidence. His face twists into an angular shape, eyes set with a gleam in their depths. He was always remind me of an owl. The patterned cream and brown silk in which he's wrapped in tonight does nothing to dispel that impression. He stands without a single glance my way, as if aware of my attention. I will take him. Whatever else they might be, a well-trained Thinblood can be of use. He speaks solemnly, but with a touch of humor. He makes me sound like I'm a pet, a dog he'll keep me leased and muzzled and teach not to piss on the rug. And then... Florian. I stall my eyes, jumping right. Don't look at me. I return my attention to Tomas, though I strain almost. My attention elsewhere. It is William's voice. William Harley, my Toreador. Well, calling him a friend is at once a little too and a little too much. Once too little and too much. He hasn't spoken aloud, and I realize with cold horror that his voice vibrates smoothly, crystal clear in my head. Good. Now listen. Say that Mr. Vane knew of you and did not denounce you. Though he has better standing than I, discredit him and I may step in instead. My art drums erratically. Funny how that still happens. Very well then, Florian Mayer, the Prince calls. What is your answer? I look up and remember. Who do I remember? Oh wait, am I saying who is my sire? Is that what I'm doing? Damn, I don't know what to do. Okay, do I do what the Toreador says? Or do I keep with the Nosferatu? I don't actually know what this answer is going to do, to be honest. If I remember someone, they might be the one that was my sire. And then that person will be the one who will be killed. Most likely. So, who do I remember? Alright. I remember William. The cat escapes my grasping fingers with a shrieking mule. No, I need a person. It's late enough that I know I will see the aurora soon, and though I won't burn, I'd sooner have the fire crawl through the day in this sorry state. But this place is not yet Ubada? It's just Buddha's thrice-damned residential streets, and at this hour of night there are no people outside on the side of Danube. I fall to sit on the concrete base of a fence. The metal bars dig in my back, the overgrown garden behind me rustles. I press my palms against my eyes. My teeth have sharpened, lengthened. They rattle and ache in my mouth. This hunger is not in the stomach nor of the flesh. This hunger would make me try to tear up asphalt bare-handed if I knew blood flowed in the ground beneath. I strain my ears. I hear soft footsteps. I jerk my head up and search the street frantically. The man I seek keeps his hands in the pockets of his coat. I stare at the tendon flexing in his neck, visible above his scarf and in the high neck of his cable-knit sweater. He approaches along the sidewalk, and when he's about to pass me, glances sideways to look at me. Gosh, finally. I stay still and try to follow him as he leaves. This isn't my style. Lurking, yes, but I'd never tried assaulting a man when he's distracted. Perhaps it's time to learn a new approach. My mouth is watering, as if I was staring at a desert behind the glassy window of a patisserie. The stranger takes a step ahead, and I see his mouth curl slightly, eyes glimmering with a faint amusement. Then he turns his face straight towards me. I wouldn't try it if I were you, by the way. My shallow breathing stops as I am nailed to the cement of my seat. The curl of his mouth opens into a brief smile, flashing me his fangs. Well, yes. I apologize. My jaw clenches. I want to bite him. I must bite him. His blood is thicker than a human's, so it would be delicious. Sir, I am sorry if this is your domain. Not precisely, but you needn't worry. What's your name? Florian. I gape, the word fleeing out of my mouth too quickly, unthinkingly. If he's with Liedrich or any of the other anarchs I double-crossed, this certainly is where my run ends, too far from Tomas's domain for his cameras to protect me. But the stranger smiles, his expression oddly mellow, appealing. I'm William Harley, and you, Florian, are acting a little starved. Don't enjoy seeing a frenzy in the streets, especially after you've been noticed loitering about in the area for 2 nights. Besides, we are quite close to sunrise. The gray haze in the air adds to the agitation that rolls and roils within me, a parasite that can never break its shell. A beast too weak to awaken, but he doesn't know this. He hints down the street with a nod. Come, I know a place. Bereft of options and exhausted, I stand wobbly on my feet. The undead do nothing for free, but I'll worry about the cost later. So, I follow. He makes me wait outside of a gray apartment building shadowed by old pines. When he comes to call me, the 2 women who welcome me don't even look surprised by what I need.